addiction, prevention, recovery.
Welcome to the Recovery Rebirth podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Recovery Rebirth podcast. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Jillian.
Welcome, audience, to another edition of the Recovery Rebirth podcast. Today we're going to talk about an interesting topic that, addiction affects us in a lot of different ways. And addiction, let's start off with what addiction is, because a lot of people, you say, you're addicted to that. And I'm not addicted to that, and denial and all that. Addiction is simply a treatable chronic medical disease. But it's complex because it involves the brain, it involves genetics, it involves your environment, and it involves individuals' life experiences. And what happens is you get into compulsive behaviors or engaging in behaviors that turn into compulsive behaviors with often, not all the time, but often harmful consequences.
Yeah.
But if you find yourself unable to stop doing something, or you crave something and compulse about it so bad, you're sitting there thinking about it, repetitive thoughts, I've got to have this, I got to do this, you might be addicted to something. How many times a day do you check your phone, Jillian?
I have no idea. I did want to add real quick, if I could,
please.
To your definition, because I think, a lot of people, myself included, before recovery, view addiction as, it's kind of like this myopic view of it must be alcohol or drugs, or like that's the only kind of addiction.
Right,
and we know it's far more expansive. So when you say medical condition, I think, well, if you factor the brain into that, right? Because there are things like I struggle with process addictions. So things like, codependency or love addiction, those kinds of things don't really have a substance that you ingest or, partake in, but they're still a very addictive behavior. So for me, any sort of compulsive behavior that has a negative effect on your relationships, that to me is indicative of an addiction as well. So that's just my little addendum.
No, I agree with you 100%. As a matter of fact, in recovery coach school that I went to, we talked about what is recovery, which is the opposite of addiction. So, and recovery doesn't just mean you're separated from your substance. Recovery is actually the simplest way to put it is an improved quality of life.
I love that.
So,
yes.
So harm reduction plays into that, and that might be a topic for our future discussions. Harm reduction is a huge hot topic in the news, so we're going to talk about that in the future.
That sounds good.
So keep tuning in, tuners. So we, the addiction to social media has become a huge issue. They say that 75% of Americans are addicted to their cell phones.
Yeah, I would say, and of course I'm going to be like, I'm not one of those people. I do check it a lot, but a lot for work too, especially in my new job. There's an expectation that I'm going to be attentive to my phone. Like if the VP I'm supporting is texting me, like this happened earlier this week where it was like, hey, I need a conference room booked in 15 minutes. I'm like, right. Okay. And anyhow, it's for a building that I'd never booked a conference room. So I'm like scrambling to get that taken care of. But I definitely have in the past, especially when I first started the Facebook and had the app on my phone. I actually just put it back on. That's probably a bad idea. I deleted it off my phone for a while because I didn't want and no push notifications for sure.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you have your notifications turned on for stuff? I mean, using your phone for work is not addiction.
Right, that is a necessity, but it creeps into like my newest social media addiction is Reddit, as you know. But yeah, I would say like my son, he's 20, he's super addicted to his phone, and and a lot of people his age, and even our age, to be honest. And my daughter gets irritated when we people my age rip on her generation. She's like, I see people your age like texting and driving and doing all these things too. And to be fair, she's right. It's not just a younger generation thing.
No, and we're going to get into the generational piece of it, but right now I'm just kind of focusing on the electronic media and kind of honing in, because there is information out there about young people and their addiction to their phones. Like, it's worse. I'm addicted to my phone. I put it down when I'm camping. Like, if I go camping, that's my escape.
Yeah.
So I put the phone down and don't pay as much attention to it. I'll throw it in the tent, whatever, and try to just enjoy who or whatever's in front of me. But when I'm in and around town, and because of work and all of that, I tend to pay close attention to the phone, and I have all sorts of notifications turned on. And I find myself, like if I hear the sound, it's like Pavlov's dog. The bell rings, and I have to go check my phone. And they do say, they've done studies on this, that 75% of Americans are addicted to their cell phone. Now, as far as social media goes, you've got a lot of social media out there, but the number ones that are, according to addiction statistics worldwide, Facebook is number one, YouTube is number two, and surprisingly, WhatsApp is number 3, ahead of Instagram.
Interesting.
And then followed by a close second here, or a close fifth. It would be Facebook Messenger. And
so they separate Messenger from Facebook.
Yes, because Messenger is more like a texting app, and Facebook is the news feed and all the pages and so forth. So the Messenger piece is I get group messages, and I have individual messages on there, and some of it's for work, some of it's for personal, so it makes it more difficult to stay away because it could be a work thing.
Right.
But I have to have my phone. If I left the house one time and forgot my phone, and I felt naked. I mean,
but you weren't really naked, right?
No, I remembered to put pants on.
Oh, good.
Okay, so I was wearing pants, but I always carry my phone, and it freaked me out. I'm like, what if something happens?
Right.
I always think, like, what in case of emergency? I could dial 911, right? I'm like, catastrophizing.
All right. Well, but you couldn't if you didn't have your phone. I mean.
Well, exactly. So now, when we look at teenagers, though, or young people, this is where it gets worse, because they have to have their phone, they got the notifications on, and social media makes them feel depressed and disconnected. Social media was originally intended to connect us.
People.
Right. Exactly. So instead, it's disconnecting people. And
it is.
Teenagers feel left out.
FOMO.
They get bullied.
Yes.
If they get if they do a post and they get a minimal amount of likes, and they're feeling a little bit like, how come people don't like my post?
Their self-esteem tanks.
I have to admit that I have made posts and wondered, why don't people like my posts? I've done it.
I have too.
And all of a sudden I don't get enough likes, and I'm feeling disconnected. Like, well, why don't they like me?
Right.
What about me? What about my feelings?
Oh boy.
So they delete social media posts. Teenagers are in the habit of actually deleting a whole post because it's like, oh, can't have this up there with a minimal amount of likes. So so over 70% of teens and young adults in the U.S. have social media addiction.
Yeah. I believe it. I absolutely believe it. I actually have to share real quick similar story to when you left without your phone. A couple of years ago or so, my phone was just dying on me, and it completely died. I couldn't get a charge at all. So I had to resort to emailing from my computer, which felt like sending a Pony Express message. So like my kids are like, they probably will never see it. But my dad responded. I'm like, my phone is dead. I can't get a hold of anyone. You'd think I was stranded on a freaking desert island. I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to survive? And I'm like, get in your car, drive somewhere to somebody and like use their phone. But I'm like, oh my gosh, what if an emergency did happen? Because it is actually, first and foremost, I think it's supposed to be a phone, not a handheld computer, but I feel like the phone function is a secondary function.
Our phones are more powerful than the computers that sent the man to the moon from NASA.
Yeah.
I mean, our phones are handheld computers.
They are.
And the thing is it's been designed now by a lot of companies to make people go to the mobile solution.
Yes.
Banking and airline flights and checking in. Mobile check-in is one of the best things I've ever discovered on the airlines. It's
Ordering some Qdoba or something.
You used to have to stand at a window, and be in line to get a ticket and to go stand on another line somewhere. So now you got like mobile. So everybody's driving traffic to the mobile phones,
They are.
And that's adding to the situation. And ordering food and
Dude, I ordered my Starbucks with my mobile app this morning, and I do love online banking. Like there are some good things. We can get to that later, but right now we're focused on the addictive part.
Well, here's an interesting insight into it, and you've heard of artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Which I have often been accused of myself. That I have no. But all kidding aside, artificial intelligence is the problem.
Yeah.
We think of artificial intelligence in sci-fi movies where the robots are coming to kill us, and the robots are taking over the planet. Mm-hmm. When in fact, it's not robots. It's mainframe computers and server farms that are running artificial intelligence for all sorts of media.
Yeah.
Social media, all these other apps that you use. Artificial intelligence is trying to improve. It started out as a marketing thing, Well, it started out as a connection thing, and then it went to a marketing thing. Mm-hmm. Remember to make a note in the show notes to put a link to The Social Dilemma. Documentary.
It's weird how we're almost psychically connected. So we're sitting across the room from each other, folks, and guess what I was just writing down on my piece of paper?
The Social Dilemma.
In addition to that, there's another one. I think it was called like The Great Hack. Mm-hmm. Because as you're talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've watched a couple really incredible. Yeah. So Social Dilemma and Great Hack, I will put links to those because those are both very telling and kind of chilling when it talks about the AI and like the algorithms and how they really, we give away all this information that makes it so easy for them to like finally hone, all the social media companies and whatever. But the AI stuff, it's very sobering. And yet here I am still using social media.
Well, it's a tool. And just like any tool, like a hammer can be a good tool. Mm-hmm. If you're building something, a hammer is an essential tool. But you can also hurt yourself with a hammer. I've hit my thumb a few times trying to drive a nail in, or you can use it as a weapon.
Yes, you can.
So it wasn't. Here's the thing: is watching that documentary, The Social Dilemma. Mm-hmm. It wasn't meant to be a weapon, but it's turning into one.
Yes.
And they had a bunch of the programmers who originally worked. I think they had people from Facebook, Twitter, all these different social media platforms, right? And they were talking about how the intention of AI was to just make the news feed that you get better so that you can keep up with your friends and family.
Right.
But then they've got to pay for all this, so it's nothing is free in life. Someone pays for it. There's even they talk about free health care. It's not really free health care. It's
right.
Somebody pays somewhere.
Exactly.
The doctor's got to pay the electric bill, so the doctor's getting paid from somewhere. So anyway, there's the platforms have to pay people to keep them up, or we've all used a bad app that doesn't work right, and so you got to have top level programmers. Well, the way to get these people is to have a lot of money, and to have a lot of money, well, what do? It's like when TV started, and radio, the original media, and newspapers before that, way back in media history, and they sold advertising. Mm-hmm. So it's about advertising. So now The Social Dilemma does a great job of explaining it because they actually use real life humans in the example and show bits and pieces like Hollywood Squares, with all like being on a Zoom meeting, all the different boxes going at the same time. So you have the different people involved and then the computers represented by, this control room. but there really isn't people in the control room. But it says, okay, Jillian likes ice cream.
Right.
So
true story.
I love ice cream. It's one of my addictions. We could probably talk about that in another episode. But I can't pass up an ice cream shop. So anyway, the computer sees that Jillian likes ice cream, and what we're going to do is we're going to follow the ice cream topic through and present things that are related to ice cream. So all of a sudden, like, you don't see my posts because I'm not talking about ice cream, but your friend Joey or whatever is talking about ice cream, and now you get posts from them.
Or I'm getting ads from ice cream companies.
And then you're getting ads from ice cream companies is going to be the next step. And I've done weird searches on Google just to see what would come up in my social media for ads. Just do an oddball search for something like a microwave potato bag.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever used a microwave potato bag, but you can put potatoes in a bag and put them in the microwave, and they come out nice and delicious like a baked potato. Okay. Anyway, I went and did a search for this, and it's just the weird stuff from kitchen suppliers,
Yeah.
Everything you can imagine, including potato bags, but other stuff related, starts showing up in social media.
Yeah.
So picture this multiplied by thousands, if not millions, of people out there. And that's what's happening to us, and it intensifies because the computer is doing the algorithm.
Yeah.
So if they hook on to something, they go deeper into it and deeper into it until the next thing and the next thing, and before you know it, there's 10 things on the list that you love, and they're going to market to you. So so it's pretty scary what AI is doing to us. It's got us hooked. That's what's taking over the world.
Wow. Well, and on related but separate, I don't want to get too off track with our topic, but we've also seen the influence that social media has had in elections in the last several years, talking about tapping into that algorithm and people going deeper and deeper and deeper and then catering more and more to their bias. Anyhow, I know that could be a whole separate podcast, and I don't want to get too far off on that tangent.
Well, you're on to something, though, because that's part of the addiction.
Yeah.
Is that if you have a particular political stance, not only are you going to get positive reinforcement, but you're going to get negative reinforcement, and it builds hate.
Yeah.
It's not because everybody out there is good or bad or whatever, which is what it looks like. These people are evil. It's because the posts from the people that might be evil or off a little bit on topic, they start to show up more because it gets you riled up.
Right.
Remember, this is a computer doing this, not a person, so they're not thinking about anyone's real feelings. The computer is trying to get eyeballs on the screen.
And the people who are getting riled up, well, we see a lot of these are kind of psychology terms, confirmation bias, and also cognitive dissonance. I took a social psychology class a year and a half ago. But yeah, it really, and we're seeing that so much in society and especially in social media right now. So people tend to seek out what confirms their existing bias. And then what you take a charismatic politician or person and then a really good algorithm or bot or whatever. And it just, to see how polarizing it has become and how, anyhow. But
you're right, though. You're 100% on topic with it. And I noticed a stat. There are over 200 million people that suffer from social media addiction.
Wow.
Younger women spend an enormous amount of time on social media. And sometimes they're doing their makeup and hair just to take a selfie.
Yeah.
So that they can look cute.
Yeah, or they're using filters, or I mean, I know all about those. I don't really use them, but at almost 50, they're kind of tempting. There's some things I wanted to relate to the addiction, especially, and I can relate to being a young woman because I was one once, and I am so grateful.
You still are.
Oh, God bless you. I'll hug you later. I am so grateful that social media didn't exist when I was a preteen teenager dealing with all my self-esteem crap then. Yeah. Because I would have been a way more depressed kid. There was early on in Facebook days, I remember this, I don't know if it was not an app, but something within Facebook called like Hot or Not.
That's how Facebook got started. That's what it was before
so
it was a full-blown platform.
Yeah, so these girls, so what, my opinion, this is what I'm seeing, is the validation seeking, the validation addiction. Just like, and then not feeling, so like if you do this hot or not thing, and then you're putting yourself out there in the public for people to judge you. And if you don't have a really strong sense of self and strong self-esteem, that could be catastrophic. And then you talked about the cyberbullying. There's also a phrase that I love that my one of my sponsors taught me called compare and despair. That I know I have done, I know many other people have done, but and we've talked about this I think in other podcasts too, but like, comparing our like what ends up on the cutting room floor to others' highlight reels.
Yeah, right.
Oftentimes people present a carefully curated depiction of their lives. Now I personally get kind of messy because that's just me. Like I try to be really authentic with what I share. So I mean, I'll put my stuff out there about like, my mom's mental illness and my struggles with codependency, yada, yada, childhood trauma. Not everybody wants to put that out there. I get that. But oftentimes what we're seeing is, what people want us to see. And I've talked to people who seem to like on Facebook have this wonderful, like, I just love following their posts. I'm like, oh, you're just the cutest couple. You're so in love. And like, then I have talked to one of them later after they've broken up. It's like, oh yeah, it looked really good on Facebook. But that's not reality.
That's
Oftentimes
fantasy.
That's not reality. Yes,
it's the fantasy addiction piece kicking in because you have this fantasy life that everything is perfect. I know of several people that only post positive posed images of themselves or their family, and they do it because they want to appear as if they have this perfect I'm dating myself a little bit, this Leave It to Beaver life of this perfect, world. And that's, they're addicted to the fantasy of, okay, I have the house, I have the 2.5 children, I got the BMW in the driveway, I got this or that. Yeah. And just looking like, the perfect America. Yeah. And it's fantasy addiction. And people feed into it. And with what you were talking about with female, hot or not, and female self-esteem and so forth, the fantasy of what is hot changes over time. I mean, if you look at old pinup pictures, you ever seen those? I'm into photography, so I mean, I kind of think that some of those pictures were cute, little posed pictures.
Like Betty Page.
Yeah. But you look at the body styles and the clothing that made a pinup girl. Yeah. Okay, and it changed over the years. It went from curvy to slim to super slim, back to curvy, back to really curvy. It's all over. And luckily today we're paying more attention to the fact that all body types can be attractive.
Amen, brother.
And it just depends on who's doing the looking. But you set up the fantasy. When Victoria's Secret models are all, rail skinny, and then that's presented over and over and over again, the fantasy is that that's what you want. It's like a product. It's marketing. You want the detergent that's going to get your clothes whiter. You want the cereal that's going to taste better. You want all this stuff. Well, the same thing happens to us with our emotions and attractions toward the opposite sex, or the same sex, or whatever. Attraction toward another human being. To.
Yeah. I think, young people, and I can't speak to, I'm not saying this doesn't affect young men or, people who, gender aside, like, I can only speak to a young woman experience because that was my experience. But they're particularly, young people, I think, are particularly vulnerable to that, and because they're not really formed. I mean, our prefrontal cortex isn't, like, fully formed till we're 25. So figuring out our sense of self and then being bombarded with these unrealistic images of beauty, or at least unrealistic for us. And I'm so glad that you talked about, and I hope we're getting to that point, getting to that stage in society where we do recognize that, like, all bodies, all shapes, like there's no one size fits all that's healthy or beautiful. Like, and thank God there are many people who appreciate all different types of beauty, because I definitely struggled as a young woman with borderline anorexia, and I was obsessed with, being thin, and that's body dysmorphia. So it's really harmful, like this social media, this compare and despair, the validation addiction. I have a separate side note of something really unhealthy that I've done with social media. And this was in my 40s.
Are you going to share?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay.
And and we've talked about this in prior podcasts, but when my alcoholic ex, when I discovered that he was seeing, like, simultaneously dating me and somebody else on this, and this has been, 7-8 years ago now, but it was a very, very painful, it was my rock bottom. And I would obsessively go look at her profile and do the compare and despair. I'm like, what does she have that I don't? I'm like, look at her pictures. So unhealthy. So unhealthy.
Terribly unhealthy.
And it was just like emotional cutting. I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, why? I've gotten better, but it's just that, I don't know, morbid curiosity. I'm like, what do I expect to get out of this other than, like, feeling like crap about myself? So, I mean, I know I'm not alone in probably doing that and, like, looking at others and, like, what do they have that I don't? But in my case, it was particularly like, this is the person they cheated on me with. And so, of course, I'm feeling like less than, and there must be something so magical. And I mean, I know that truly when this is off topic a bit, but when people cheat, it really has very little to do with their partner and a lot to do with their own insecurities. So
absolutely.
But that was a very, very unhealthy way I was using Facebook for a while years ago.
Well, what causes all this addiction to social media? And some people may be surprised by this. Frankly, having studied addiction as long as I have, it doesn't surprise me as much as you'd think. But dopamine.
Oh, heck yeah.
It's a dopamine release. The same thing like gambling addiction.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
When you're pulling that lever on the slot machine, sadly, if you walk into a casino, a lot of times you see elderly people who are trying to get a dopamine rush, who are, bored, and they're sitting there playing the slots, over and over and over.
Yeah.
And then when you get a little winning, it's a dopamine hit.
So do you know, and I've never really connected this before, but it is the same with the social media addiction and gambling addiction and some others, but these are really clear to me. The intermittent reinforcement that you get in gambling, you also get that in social media sometimes. So, like, personal experience. Sometimes I try not to post a lot of pictures because I just don't love my pictures anyhow. But sometimes, like, I'll post one and I'll be like, I thought that was really cute. How come I only got 35 likes? And then I'll post another one. I'll be like, wow, I got 100 plus but it's that intermittent reinforcement. I think it works with social media too, because you're like, oh, look at the validation I got out of that. I feel so, attractive and seen and blah, blah, blah and whatever. And people really like me. It's the same thing with the gambling. Like, and sometimes you don't win and other times you get that hit of dopamine. And yeah, there's a scientific
And when you
behind
get one step closer to your fantasy life of whatever that is for you, because it's probably different for different people. But in America, we've been set up, in a lot of ways through marketing over the years, that certain things are part of the fantasy. Like driving a Mercedes, a BMW, a Lamborghini, any of those high-end cars. And they are fun to drive. But, is it practical to go get one when you've got, 3 kids and a house and stuff like that, to have a Lamborghini, unless you're doing really well financially, which is fine. People do that. But we're striving toward fantasy, and I guess we're gonna run out of time. We're gonna probably have to do episode number 2 and talk more about fantasy addiction. But this dopamine rush that you're getting from getting closer to your fantasy, this hit of dopamine, every step closer you get makes you feel better.
Yes.
So you're going to keep doing it. It's like winning, winning $20 on the slots after you spend 50, and then you win 20 back, and you're like, there's hope. There's hope. So we'll keep going.
Yeah. I would also say that, and this is just Jillian's opinion, I have no idea. I haven't researched it, but like any other addiction, it's just a distraction from our own lives. Let's say, like, if we're kind of miserable in our own lives, it's a great distraction from our lives. And sometimes we can, present a different life, or we can just maybe look at other things that seem more appealing. I also, aside from like the car you were talking about, you see a lot of like these fantastic vacations that people go on, or like their wonderful romantic relationship and their loved one taking them on a romantic date and sending them flowers and all those things where if like you're not in a great place, it can make you feel like, well, my life's worthless. I mean, and then it's that compare and despair part. But I definitely the dopamine, and I think it's also just the distraction, which I feel like most addictions are a distraction for us.
So the opposite can happen of what you're talking about with people who are miserable. Because there are internet trolls out there who are just looking to tear somebody down.
Yep.
So you could post this great picture where you think you're having fun and looking good and you're just enjoying yourself, and then somebody comes along and says, well, you suck, who wants to go there, or you look terrible today, or what's wrong, you look fat, whatever it is people attacking to make themselves feel better, and that turns into cyberbullying, and in social media it can often be done anonymously.
Yes, people can hide behind screen names,
fake profiles, screen names where you can't tell who it is. I see it in the news media quite often.
In the comments.
Trolls in the comments will just post things or try to get their issue out there of what they think is important. That's not even relevant to the topic to begin with. So it just it goes on and on with this fantasy life, and we're going to hit that up in our next podcast. Part 2 of social media and fantasy addiction.
Nice.
We'll have to do a part 2. We haven't done a series in a little minute.
It's been a minute. Can I share a quick? Because I know we always try to focus on the solution.
Yeah.
I mean, we do have those documentaries that I'll post. But I was writing down with my notes, like using social media in a healthy way, because I want to look at the flip side. So just real quickly, something that I do. Well, it's not social media or just, the internet more broadly. Connecting with people online, like in really healthy, supportive ways. Online meetings, for example, are a way that I use technology, the internet, for healthy ways. And the Reddit, I'm on that app quite a bit. But I found a couple of communities for my stage in life, very exciting, menopause and hysterectomy forums, which is not a place I ever envisioned myself like when I was a younger person, but they've been incredibly helpful. So it's just a very supportive, there's no tearing each other down, there's no like comparing, it's like rooting for you, I'm here for you, like let us know how it goes, like, so they're amidst all of the the cesspool that social media can be, there are some bright spots out there. So I just want to encourage folks to kind of seek those out, because there really are opportunities to do what I think it was intended to do, to connect.
Right. It's social media, and that's what it started out. The original intention was to be social and connect people. So I have friends and family all over the country, if not the globe, and I'm able to keep in touch with those people and keep up with their lives a bit, to that you would lose touch with. Your circle would become so small if you didn't have social media. It's expansive to the people that I've met from different parts of the United States and can keep in touch. So there are many positive sides.
Yes.
I kind of get a mini chuckle when people say, well, I'm deleting my social media, I've had enough of this. And I'm thinking to myself, well, you're just going to go home and be alone and disconnect from everybody, because anywhere you go there's going to be good and bad people.
Yeah.
So how about the scroll button? That's what your index finger is for scrolling, and or your thumb, depending on your style, on the phone. Or use your mouse on the computer. Just scroll past the stuff that's bothering you and go to the stuff that's important to you. And you can actually adjust your news feeds on this various social media.
Exactly. Adjust your filters. You can minimize what you see from some people. Or you can go in and tweak that. But try not to doom scroll. That's not a fun thing. But just scroll past the negative. And adjust your filters.
Right. Somebody makes a political statement you don't agree with. You don't have to start an argument.
Nope.
Just scroll past, It doesn't always have to be a fight. Pick your battles, in life. There are many positive things. I always say, when I've done social media training for work, I've given seminars on social media and how to use it. And one thing I've always said to everybody is social media is like a big cocktail party. You could meet the person that would change your life at a cocktail party, somebody that's going to help you in business or your future mate. You could meet that person at a cocktail party, but you could also go to a cocktail party and meet somebody you can't wait to get away from that's holding you hostage, having a conversation you don't want to have in the first place.
Right.
So social media is just that multiplied by hundreds. You know, it's that's what it is. It is what it is.
Yes.
And if you use the tool, like the hammer, for what it was intended for, to drive nails in and pull nails out, instead of, you know, hitting your thumb with it or hitting someone else with it, worse, much worse. But, you know, if you use it properly, it's a great tool. So we'll have some links in our show notes. There's show notes for every show, and we try to put some relevant links in there. And remember that help for social media addiction is just like help for any other addiction. There are healthy ways to get dopamine. There are plenty of healthy ways. Nature, you know, exercise, proper food and, you know, nutrition, etc. Hanging out with a good friend in person. That type of thing. So follow the path of the good stuff, and we hope this helps you to understand. I think half the battle is becoming aware of these things, and that's a big part of the battle is awareness. First step in addiction is admitting, you know, we're powerless over social media, and that my social media has become unmanageable.
Right. Yes.
So tune in for episode part 2 of social media and fantasy addiction. We'll dig a little bit more into the fantasy addiction, because that can have its own paths, and not all of the fantasy addiction is online either.
Yeah.
Fantasy addiction can go right into interpersonal relationships. So tune in for part 2. Thanks for being with us. Thanks, Jillian.
Thank you, Dom. Thank you, listeners.
We'll talk to you next time in part 2 of social media and fantasy addiction on the Recovery Rebirth podcast.